Speaking for Ireland, I never claimed I do it, but is there someone who does? Well, Dagdi Vogus Fáilte, hi along, welcome Jon O'Sullivan Irish Pagan School here. And my role and my passion is exploring our ancient Irish mythology, folklore, culture, and everything else in order to try and share as much information as I can around this. And recently, yeah, we've hit some very interesting kind of sections of the internet sharing the content and the free resources that we do. And yeah, someone kind of threw a comment at me about, well, it's not like you speak for all of Ireland. And no, absolutely not. I don't speak for all of Ireland. But it did trigger something in my brain, a memory of something I read quite a while ago. And there was. There was one person, there was a role in ancient Irish society for someone to speak, not just on behalf of their Tua, not just on behalf of, their local kind of rulers or anything like that, but on behalf of Ireland. And that person had a title, and that role was someone who was very much recognized by every Tua and every tribe. And that person was known as Ollamh na hÉireann, as in the chief poet or professor of Ireland. The word Ollamh is still used today as a professor, but Ollamh na hÉireann was a singular individual. And it wasn't a chieftain, it wasn't a king, it wasn't even a druid, it was a bard. And so that is where things actually grow. Like when we talk about the ancient Irish culture, we're talking about Tuas, which was tribal lands all across the island. We know, for example, that in the medieval, the kind of early medieval period, that there was no less than about 108 different distinct kind of tribes or Tuas within Ireland, each with their own chieftains and kings, each with their own kind of lineages and kind of arrangements and lands. Now, those then would have alliances, would have family connections to kind of greater powers, and wasn't exactly a top-down feudal system, but it was more like a sideways kind of association feudal system or clan system, which then led to larger kind of like clusters of allied kind of tribes, which is where we get things like the northern and southern O'Neills or Eneils and the O'Gonachs, for example, in the south. And so these were the power plays that we had, usual kind of installations of kingship or kings in Ireland from those kind of people. But each individual tribe had their own bards, had their own storytellers, and also had a person known as a filla. And a filla was the kind of best of the best. In fact, we know from the law tract in Ireland that a filla could demand the same honour price as a king or chieftain for any harm done against them, because unlike most people of a tribe or tua, filla were known as Cernemid. They had freedom to move in between tribes. They had freedom to carry stories and go around the island as a whole. And this was a big fucking deal, because if you were found outside your own tribal lands, you were pretty much game to be raided, taken hostage, sold back to your people, or harmed. So it was pretty fucking important to recognize the role of those who could actually travel freely without, like, worry. And again, like, you're not going to have, it's not always going to be perfect. There's always going to be times when harm can be done. But understanding that underneath the Brehon law, that a filla could demand the same honor price as a chieftain, you're less likely to kind of come to harm in that kind of circumstance, because it's going to cost a fuck ton to hostage that person back or to pay for any damage or harm done against that person. And that's not even taking on board the ability of the bard or filla themselves to perform satire against you. Satire being a recognized legal status which would shift or change someone's role or position within society. Satire could topple kings. Absolutely, a legal satire placed against them could end their rule, as we have seen in the mythological cycle when Brest is toppled from his seat by the bard, the Tuatha De Danann bard, Capra. Um, but yeah, Olaf na hÉireann, speaking for Ireland, get us back on track. Yeah, so there were like bards. Bards are kind of your locals, your kind of like general performers. Filla were the people who kind of sat in the noble halls, who had access to the upper echelons of society. And again, they were the well respected. And again, you'd have to be skilled. You'd have to have a significant amount of skill to go from a bard to being a villa. And then to go from a filla to being an olive was another kind of like duration. Like, we know that in order to kind of get training, for example, to become a druid or a brehon or a bard, you're talking 12 years. and then from there you'd have to kind of level your experience and grow, and you'd be put to the test or question in order to show and prove that you had your knowledge, not just that you could remember stuff and relay stuff, but also that it would be performed in the right way, that it be pronounced in the right way. There's actual rules and parameters around the meter in which you would do a particular bardic performance, which is where we get the indications of Rosk poetry, which is some of the oldest kind of form of poetry that we know in Ireland. So it's fascinating. This whole area is fascinating, and so then you go from being a fella to being an Ollamh, and there was Professor John Carey of UCC did a lovely kind of paper on this about the three things that a fella would need to become an Ollamh. Um, I I don't have that paper to hand. It's been a while, but it's kind of imbos Pharasna, which is like your the access to inspiration and being able to turn inspiration into knowledge. There's the Hecht on Kenneb, which being able to speak off the top of your head. So if someone asks you the question about, oh, why is that mound or that river or that lake named that way, you have to be able to pull the answer out. And then this is where there's a third one on it, which was kind of changed by none other than St. Patrick, who had to kind of undermine or change or alter the profession of bards and fillers to remove their divinatory kind of practices, because that was magic and shouldn't be done by lay people. All the while, saints accordingly are rocking around banishing serpents and pulling off miracles or magical practices because it's in the name of their god. Um, yeah, different talk for a different day on that one, I'm sure, if anyone is interested. But yeah, we do know that there was an individual who went above Ollamh, and they were known specifically as Ollamh na hÉireann, and their job was to speak for Ireland. To speak for Ireland in its totality, like, regardless of chieftains, tuas, kingdoms, conflicts, regardless of, brehons, druids, bards, anything at all, there was one person who was known as Ollamh na hÉireann. And there is a story that we have from our cycles, which is known as the Colloquy of the Two Sages. And in this, there's a young guy who kind of is he kind of is born with the bardic ability in him, and he levels to become a filler very quickly, and he goes outside the normal structure of learning and practice. He ends up going outside of Ireland, and he comes back, and he's gained a lot of abilities because of his nature and because of his bloodline, and he comes back and he challenges for the seat of Ollamh na hÉireann. And so it's a lovely kind of story about that. Now me, I refer to myself as a bard. I don't even refer to myself as a fella. I don't like. I'm nowhere near being an Ollamh. Like, I am a decade on in my journey of practicing and learning and teaching all about our ancient Irish culture and our mythology, and the joy I have in doing that is something that, really I makes me smile every day, and helps me get to the office and do these videos. But I would never presume to speak for Ireland, because I'm not there as yet. I'm not there. I have not gained enough of a position or practice. But who's to say? Give me another couple of decades. I might become fella. I might then become Ollamh. And heck, we haven't had an Ollamh na hÉireann in quite a while. Some would say generations, since our culture was so drastically undermined. But why would we not have someone who can speak for Ireland? But at the moment, no. I'm going to be very clear. I do not speak for Ireland. I don't speak on behalf of the entire island of Ireland. I speak on behalf of my culture where I can. I speak on behalf of myself and my experiences. I speak on behalf of my Tua, the tribe and the community that we have built around the Irish Pagan School. And I speak on behalf of myself and my partner in some areas of the Irish Pagan School. And they speak on their behalf in regards to their side of things and the Irish Pagan School as well. So, yeah, the reason why I want to kind of touch on this is I'm not telling you how to live your life. I'm not here to kind of tell you, oh, okay, I will tell you you're wrong. If you have misinformation, if some part of your practice has been appropriated, I will tell you you're wrong. But in most cases, I'm here to point you to the resources, to guide the way and say, listen, have you considered this? This is how to approach things, maybe a bit more ethically, maybe a bit more honestly, maybe a bit more openly. Here's how to kind of touch base with an authentic connection to Ireland, the authentic gods that we have here, as opposed to misconstrued, copied over information, or information shifted and changed through other kind of practices or spiritual beliefs. So that's all I'm here to do. And again, you don't have to listen to me. Totally fine. You got to look after yourself, and you got to do your own practice and kind of follow your own pathway. But time and again, people, come to us, they get learning, and sometimes it's uncomfortable for them, and sometimes they're like, you know, they hit on something that kind of challenges their sense of self or their sense of well-being or their sense of or their experiences. And some cases they step away. It's all terrible, like, yeah, go on, whatever, and then they leave. But you'd be surprised how many of them actually come back after a time of decompressing, after a time of integrating and processing. They realize that, maybe there is more for them to learn if they are willing to, as we say here at the Irish Pagan School, just do the work. So that is where we are. I don't speak for Ireland, but who knows? Maybe there's a place for me as Ollamh Nair, and maybe I can grow in that way. And I'm going to keep investing in my own education, investing in my own abilities and my own skills to maybe, challenge myself to step up and to grow more in the role that I have chosen, the path I have chosen myself as a bard to become a filla. Who knows? Maybe I one day will demand the same honor price as someone of, heightened status within Ireland society. But until then, if you're looking to know more, if you want to level up your knowledge and your skills, all you got to do is go to irishpagan.school/free. We have a whole lot of free resources there, a year's worth of teaching if you're to do one a week or so. There's a whole lot of content available. And then you can go deeper again, go to the Irish Pagan School itself. We have a lot more kind of deeper learning classes. And we have a lot to kind of get into and to explore for yourself, and more content released every month in the school, as well as more free resources coming out all of the time. So make sure you're on our mailing list as well. So until next time, look after yourself, take care. And for me, Bard, Dag the Bard, look after yourself, take care, and slán.